Hello and welcome to the You Want Game podcast. My name is Sean Dorcelis. I am a senior student at Syracuse University studying broadcasting and digital journalism with a concentration on sports culture. I'm the host of today's episode. Founded by Joe Branch and Bill Babora, You Want Game is a nonprofit organization that has helped many high school student athletes reach their potential in academics and athletics, as well as personal growth through life skills and career development. Through mentoring, workshops, and events, You Want Game brings professionals from various backgrounds to speak with high school student athletes and to give them a look at the game behind the game. Please visit youwantgame.org for more information on the organization. Today on the You Want Game podcast, we are honored to have Brandon Barkley, who works as the player relations manager for the Dallas Mavericks. Brandon is a former collegiate athlete. He was the captain of the basketball team at Grand Valley State University, and he also coaches for the MBB Elite AAU program. Brandon, happy Friday. It might not be Friday by the time the folks are watching this, but happy Friday to you. How's it going, sir?
I'm good, man. Happy Friday to you as well. I'm happy to be alive. That's some nice weather out here in Texas too, so I'm not mad at all.
A little warmer in Texas than it is in Syracuse, I'm sure, but we got the sun shining too, so can't complain on this end either.
Nice, very nice.
Yeah, so we're gonna get into that Mavericks game from last night. I intern for the Nets right now. Y'all boys beat my boys, so we'll get into that later. But tell me, Brandon, a little bit about your background, your journey. Obviously, you're working as the player relations manager now. But where does Brandon Barkley come from? Where does his story start?
Wow, that's a great question. I was born in Hagerstown, Maryland. My mom worked for Bank of America, so we kind of moved around a lot. And a lot of people know, obviously, the Bank of America is founded in Charlotte, so that's where they're kind of housed out of the corporate headquarters. So we lived in Charlotte for a while. Then I lived in Virginia, which this explains my different random weird fandom of different teams and colleges and stuff. We moved to Virginia. After that, Richmond, Virginia, and then after that, I moved to Michigan for my high school years. And then I loved it so much, and obviously that's where I was getting recruited to play basketball and stuff. So I originally went to a school in Chicago. It's called Dominican University. Went there and I studied. I thought I was going to study psychology because I thought I wanted to be a basketball coach, like a high school coach or something, or a teacher. And I took one class and realized I am not built for psychology at all. My grades were not great in that class or in that field at all. So I said, you know what, I think I need to do something different. I didn't really enjoy the school. I loved the city, but I didn't really enjoy the school. So I moved closer to home. I moved to Grand Rapids and went to Grand Valley State. Moved up a division as well. That was Division III. This school was Division II that I was moving to, and decided to study sports management. Then I minored in business with that. So that's kind of where I had gotten to, start to study stuff that I enjoyed, which was awesome. Kind of focusing on sports and, similar to what you're studying there. I worked in a little bit of kind of what you're doing. I did some internships with Sports Desk, so I got to go out and interview athletes, high school athletes in particular, and film and learn how to edit videos and learn how sports desks work, watch the telecast. It was a really cool experience. I did that. I did an internship with an athletic director at a high school, so learned how that works and scheduling and all that stuff. And then after I left Michigan and moved down to Texas where my family was living, and started working for Lifetime Fitness. And that's where I met our guy, Jason McCreath. And then through meeting Jason and working alongside a lot of great mentors, I moved up in Lifetime and with Ultimate Hoops and started running our basketball training and leagues. And then through that, I met a guy named Greg Nard, who's now still my boss to this day, who runs a bunch of departments within the Mavericks. And Greg and I just hit it off, and gave me an opportunity to interview to work in youth basketball. And that's where I got my start. So I started working there, and then they tabbed me to move over to player relations. And 2 years in, I'm doing that now. So it's a long journey, but it's been a fun one.
A long journey, a good one. I appreciate you giving us the nice Spark Notes version there. But we're gonna get a little deeper into it now. Throughout that story you told, you mentioned a few different people, a few different names. Those are obviously people you have relationships with. Let's talk a little bit about relationships. What has been the importance of relationships in your life and also in your career?
Man, it's everything. In my life, there's several relationships that are just the reason I am who I am. I start with my parents. Been super supported my entire life in anything I'm trying to do, whether it was trying to be a garbage man or trying to be in the NBA. They were supportive of all that from every aspect it could be. And then, now my major support system is definitely my wife. She supports whatever I'm trying to do and tries to help me be able to achieve it and the best she can. So that's been key in my personal life for sure. Just being able to do this because not a lot of people know this, but sports industry, you don't sleep. There's no set schedule, so you work a lot. So you got to have a good support system behind you and people that understand it. And then from a professional standpoint, just my whole life, I've had great coaches. And then I've had really good mentors. I'd say the two that stand out to me since I left college would be John Thomas, who's actually works for the Timberwolves now in Minnesota, but he was my mentor my last job place I worked at. And then now it's my boss, name's Greg Nard. He's just been around the block. He's seen everything. He's worked at Nike. He's worked in the sports agent industry. He's just been around sports and athletes for so long. He's basically took me under his wing and taught me everything he knows. So those relationships help me understand the importance of networking. And I think that's why I'm so good at it now.
No doubt, no doubt. And a lot of that comes from, having that shared interest, of course, being genuine, all those sorts of things. Mentorship, you know, you mentioned Greg. What role has mentorship played in your life, and in what ways do you try to sort of return that favor and pay it forward?
Mentorship's been everything for me. When I first tried to get my first big boy job out of college, I sent my resume into John Thomas, and he looked at it and he called me. He said, "Hey man, you sound like a nice guy. I enjoyed talking to you, but your resume looks like crap." He's like, he's like, it's not professional. Here's what I would change, and then send it back to me. And mind you, I'm interviewing for a job. Um, and sure enough, I ended up getting the job, and that kind of started me understanding that you need to listen to people that are where you're trying to go, that have more experience of what they're doing. So learning from him, and then obviously moving in and learning from Greg. I try to take a humble approach where I feel like anybody can be my mentor. Anybody can be someone that can give me advice on how to get better at what I'm trying to do and master my craft. And then for me, I love to pay it forward, whether it is to kids in college, middle schoolers, high schoolers. Obviously, on the basketball court, I coach and I enjoy giving those life skills and basketball knowledge as well. But yeah, I mean, that's why I take it so serious to try to give back and pay it forward, because I would love to have people like yourself doing jobs like I'm doing when they're 22, 23. So by the time they're 30, they're taking over and running the whole team, stuff like that. Because that's something that, I feel like I could do at some point just because I was empowered to have this knowledge early in the game. Some people don't learn this stuff till they're 40.
Absolutely. And let's talk about now the job that you're doing. What does you mentioned earlier, working in sports, you don't sleep there, you're working holidays, weekends, all sorts of stuff. There's no set schedule. What does your day-to-day look like? Can you give us a rundown of like what your role is, particularly within the org?
Sure. So basically what I do is, in a nutshell, I mean, it expands from a lot of different things, but basically what I do is I work with it can span from 15 to 17, depending on the year or whatever, who's on the team. But I work with those entire roster on basically appearances. So basically working with them on if they're going to the community and giving back, if they're doing stuff, the sponsorship, whether it be a team sponsor or their own sponsors. I work alongside them with stuff regarding ticket sales, marketing, uh, things that will happen in game, things that will happen outside of the game. You know, you see like pictures and billboards oftentimes are a part of that, getting those approved from players. Um, and the reason you really don't sleep is because you know, you go to every single game. You're there 2 hours, 3 hours before, making sure everything's good. You're there 2, 3 hours after, making sure everybody's good. You're running all over the city, taking guys to different events, doing different stuff. Obviously, in a non-COVID time, you might get a call at like 2 a.m. Like, hey, can you check on this for me? Or you might get a call at 2 in the afternoon, like, hey, bro, can you come by and do this X, Y, Z? So like, it's very you got to be able to pivot a lot and know what everything that's going on. And I have to be super, super organized. So I really live and die by my calendar. Um, and I'm probably on my phone way too much, is what my wife would tell me.
But in that capacity, you said being organized, like you have to. That's the only way you can really succeed. What are some of the skills and tips that you could share about your own organization habits?
Man, that's a great question. People think I mean, they don't think I'm weird for it, but I'm a big believer in like spreadsheets and documents. Um, so what I do is every season I have a document, like a spreadsheet that has every single event that might happen. I get all the events from everybody that needs to send them to me. And then as we go, it's kind of like a puzzle. You kind of put guys in, as we go until before you know it, you've done 100 events that season. You're like, dang, that's we got through that. It's the spreadsheets. It's making sure, little reminders to yourself, like, hey, I gotta reminders to remind people, remind myself to reach out to so and so, remind them about such event they need to do. Um, Staying consistent with your communication, even if it's just a check-in. Players really appreciate that kind of stuff, the personal side of it as well, and just like staying on top of what's happening in their lives. Whether it is creepily like looking on their Instagram, or whether it's just talking to them in person when you get a chance and just checking in, because these are human beings and you want to make sure everything's good in their lives as well, because then that's the only way they're able to be as good as they can be on the court and off. So it's just really important to be always checking in, always paying attention to what's going on, and always staying super organized with how you're doing things.
I think in a lot of cases, some of those communication skills that you mentioned, I think that kind of comes naturally in a lot of ways. But are there any things that you've done to sort of like work on that, fostering that skill? Because communication is a part of relationships. It plays into everything, especially in a fast-paced industry, sports environment, in an org. That's a lot. So what have you done to work on your communication? How do you try to keep that intact?
Awesome question. So what I basically do. So it started, I think, for me in college. I took speech classes, um, like so I took a couple classes like surrounding like public speaking, to learn how to do it effectively and feel more comfortable doing it. So by the time I graduated, I felt pretty good about talking to large groups. And then I actually took the onus on myself to start speaking to elementary schools and middle schools, high schools. I've even talked to college students with the Mavericks. I've done that a couple times with like in the arena in front of like a couple thousand people. So now it really isn't a situation where I'm like freaking out, because there's times I've had to talk to Mark Cuban. There's times I'm talking to Dirk Nowitzki. There's times where I'm talking to Luka Doncic, and you have to have that confidence, right? Understanding that whatever you're saying, they got to believe you. So you got to have that confidence. So, I mean, I'll practice at home. I'll think about what I'm going to say, or think about what's going to happen when I do that particular event. And then I study it. I listen to TED Talks and different things about speaking, and what's in your toolbox, and how to talk to people and they know that you mean what you say. That's what a lot of people don't do, is to study like the little stuff that helps them get better. And I study it. Like, I want to make sure I'm the best communicator I could possibly be.
That's a fantastic answer. Thanks for going so in depth on that. I think it's everyone can take something from that in improving that facet. Like you said, kind of a tool in the toolkit. One of the most important ones, obviously, is communication. You mentioned in that answer a few of the events that you've worked, that you've spoken at, been featured at, but just across the board now in your tenure with the Mavs, what are some events that stick out as highlights to you, things that you've been a part of and worked on that really stand out as some of like your proudest, most exciting moments?
Wow. Man, there's been a lot of cool ones. One that I was really proud of, when the bushfires were happening in Australia a couple of years ago. We had Ryan Brokoff on the team at the moment, and sometimes these things just hatch from like your mind, or you just randomly think about like, man, that'd be kind of cool, and it actually ended up happening. But I was like, hey, we should try to help him, because I know he's trying to raise money, but how can we, with our platform, help out? So, emails on emails or whatever, and our phone call to Ryan, and we figured out a way. We're actually playing the Sixers, which actually happened to have two Australian players, obviously, with Ben Simmons. I think his name was Jonah Bolden was on the team, or his last name was Bolden. He also was on the team. So there was basically three Australians. We're gonna all be in the house at one night. So I talked to Ryan, and what we basically did was, collaboratively created a link to a page and a QR code. And before the game, we orchestrated a pregame speech where he was able to talk to the fans. And basically that night, we allowed people to all scan a QR code and go to this webpage and donate to the bushfires to help the relief of that in Australia. That's the kind of stuff that players really appreciate, but also it's just a cool thing to do. So that was one. That was awesome. Man, I've done many hospital visits where we've gone, kids that are terminally ill, and during Christmas time, or just we've done it just in regular times too, like not even just around a holiday, just gone and met with them. I think that was always awesome. One thing we did recently that I thought was really cool, even though it was virtual, but it was really fun. We got reached out to by a local kid. His teacher, he has a tumor on his spine, so he's been told he only had a couple weeks left to live, and obviously going through tough times like that is hard. He was a former athlete. I was able to get a couple of our guys on a call, and it was the night before a game. And it's just stuff that not all athletes do, but they gladly did it, and they just sat there and chatted with him like it was the long lost friends, and like a dinner, like they're having a dinner. And it's funny because the next night, one of the players, Dwight Powell, had a great game. I think he had like 25 and 10 or something crazy against the Lakers. He was going crazy. And on one of the other players' Instagram, he made a joke, and the joke was relating to our call the night before. So, I mean, a little piece of me feels like maybe like just having that phone call, and maybe the appreciation and of their own lives, and the ability to be able to put light into other people kind of fueled him to want to, perform the next night. I mean, and that kind of stuff happens all the time in the position we're in. So that is by far like the best part to me, is the giving back portion. Like the sponsorship and tickets stuff is awesome, but to me, when we can make impacts on people's lives, and they literally, can be lifted up and distracted for a moment, that's a big deal.
Absolutely. I mean, everyone wants to make that on-court impact in one way or another. And, that anecdote is I was smiling thinking about it, knowing that you can have that impact, that effect on the game in a way. But of course, the off the court impact is what really changes lives outside of just the 15 guys on the team, of course. Speaking of the Mavericks, speaking of the org, a few years ago, of course, they made big news by hiring the first Black woman CEO in the NBA, Cynthia Marshall. Tell me about the pride that you feel in working for an org that's led by a Black woman. Your experiences working with her. I don't know how many of them there have been. Just talk about the legend that she is for a little bit, if you can.
That's what she is. She's a legend. So I've actually worked very closely with Cint pretty often, because when you're kind of dealing with the players, you kind of deal with everyone. I mean, I've worked with Mark a little bit too, but like, Cint is probably alongside Greg, you know, the people I work with the most in terms of just like the big picture stuff. Um, she's awesome. You know, they say lead by example, and you know people will follow, and cultures will be set. She does a great job of that, because that was the thing about the Mavs before she came along. Um, I had just started a few months before she came in, but there wasn't a sense of like, here's our values, here's what we care about here, here's what we're going to follow in all aspects. Um, you know, it didn't seem like a place where people were always excited to work. You know, they loved it and enjoyed it because, you know, it's sports, it's awesome. But like, she's taken that and taking it times, you know, 35. She's done a great job of just creating this culture of unity and diversity and inclusion, and people feel like they have a chance to move up in their organization, a chance to potentially move to jobs they might prefer. She's really empowered our employees. So, you know, it's been amazing. You know, throughout this whole COVID time, they've taken great care of us. They haven't pressured anyone to come in and work in person. We've been working virtually. That kind of stuff is all led by Seth. And she's just someone that's just so infectious. Her personality. I mean, I'm blessed to be able to call, you know, Seth a friend and someone that I truly, truly respect. I mean, I would go to war for Cynthia because she's just awesome. She just has that kind of personality.
Absolutely. I mean, she's been tasked with spearheading so much great stuff within the Oregon. Clearly, you are a testament, to, you know, seeing the good work that she's done. In what ways do you try and contribute to that workplace culture, to that workplace environment? Obviously, you work with the players, but also your colleagues on the organizational side. In what ways do you try to provide?
Yeah, for me, so I would call my style in general. I'm a servant leader. I'm someone that I'm gonna try to help everybody win. And that's just always been my belief, even before I was in this role. But now, obviously, with the opportunity I have and the people I work with on a daily basis in terms of players, I have that opportunity to help folks, and that not just meaning outside of the org, but within it as well. And it's super collaborative, and that's my biggest thing. I think I truly believe in trying to help each and every department get exactly what they need and have to get done to be successful. So like that, her creating that, and you know, we, even the way our office is set up now, obviously it's very different now with COVID, but it's very collaboration oriented. It's, you know, there's like a lot of meeting places. There's like a cool desk where you're not like in cubes, so you can talk to people around you and stuff like that. Like that's me through and through. I'm someone that's gonna try to help you if you come to me for help. So yeah, I mean that's why she's such a perfect fit for me for sure, because I have the same belief system.
How has you mentioned, you know, just like from a physical standpoint, the way that the office is set up this last year, last, you know, 14 months have been so crazy for so many people in so many ways. What have been some of the biggest changes, that your team has undergone as a result of the pandemic?
Oh, man. Great question. A lot, to say the least. So in particular for me, someone that is used to seeing players and them seeing me almost every day or every couple days, and or physically being able to be around them, to going to that to zero is pretty tough, especially in a job like mine where there's a lot is leaning on relationships and trust and them getting to know you and know kind of person you are. Um, it's tough. It's been tough. It just shows you, though. I mean, at least for myself, I feel good that I built these relationships over the time I was in person, so that way it carried over, and we were able to get things done this year. But it's been hard. I mean, productivity's gone up for sure for our whole company, but it's been hard because, you know, typical things like selling out the arena, can't do that right now. We haven't been able to sell tickets for over half the season almost. Um, you know, those things have made it very hard. You know, there's certain things from a sponsorship standpoint we weren't able to do. Um, you know, but through and through, the Mavs have done a great job of just kind of helping us through this. We even did something where we were able to eat locally and Mark Cuban actually reimbursed us for it. So like to help local businesses, you know, the Mavs really want to take a forefront in helping Dallas. So that was really cool as well to be a part of something like that. We also cleaned up the city after some things that happened downtown. We actually went down with Dirk Nowitzki and cleaned the city, which was awesome as well. Just being leaders throughout this pandemic has been super important to us.
Absolutely. And of course, you know, a lot of those things that we've missed out on, things are looking good right now to hopefully kind of move past that, and get back to doing a lot of things that make the work worth it, doing the things that we love. What do you foresee as being, you know, some of your own personal goals, some of the department's goals, organizational goals, moving forward over this next, I mean, for the rest of the season, of course, you guys have got stuff going on, playoffs are coming up, but then the next year, the next couple of years, what do you think ideally is in store?
Man, great question. So I'd say for me in particular, the next couple of years, my thought is, you know, what I do typically, and I would encourage people of other industries to do the same thing. I reach out to other teams and learn about what they're doing and what their best practices are, so I can get better. So I've done that for the past 2 seasons now, and talked to probably about 6 or 7 other franchises and learning what they do and trying to implement. My plan is to just keep figuring out the best ways to get the most out of what we're doing and empower our players to continue to want to do things in the community and want to do appearances, because it's super valuable from a lot of standpoints. So I want to really over the top that and introduce more things that will make them feel like they're in charge, and it's not more of us asking them to do things. So that's the big goal for me professionally, and then for the team. And I would assume it's definitely obviously to continue to make playoff pushes and go farther along. I think the Mavs really want to just continue to become the standard in the NBA, not only from on the court, but from a social responsibility standpoint, from a charitable aspect, from a merch aspect, from everything, continue to be the standard of the NBA and continue to grow that. So as the team gets better and hopefully, you know, has championship aspirations, we also can back it up from every other angle. So we were doing it the right way. Cent was the start. We have, I think, the best owner in sports too. So we really have the chance to do all those things. And the only question will be, can we win a championship? So I hope that's soon too.
That's the sermon that every person that's a, you know, Mavs fan for life, as the slogan goes. That's a sermon that they all want to hear. I'm sure people that work with the org and everything. That's the excitement that a lot of people could be proud of, no doubt. We just talked about the future a little bit. Kind of turn things around on you now. Looking back on your past, what's a piece of advice that you would give your younger self?
Oh man. So I would give myself two things. I would say that a lot of the things you're worried about right now will be there later. You know, when I was in high school and college, I was so concerned about some things that had nothing to do with anything I'm doing now. Like, you know, kids are so worried about hanging out and doing this and doing that. When there was opportunities for me that I didn't take advantage of because I was concerned about other things. I wish I would have done that and thought, man, I can get those later. I wish I would have thought that way. And then too, you know, just continue to network. You know, I was kind of late in the game. I didn't really start networking until 3 or 4 years ago. I didn't realize I had networked some early on, but I wish I would have really taken the onus on myself to do so when I was in high school and college. Because, you know, I'm learning now that is like everything. You know, how you get jobs, how you move forward in the world. A lot of it is about who you know, unfortunately.
Who you know, that plays a big role in everything. And it's like you said, sometimes it's the sort of thing that you only realize when you're in the building.
Yes.
So for, you know, that's the advice that you would give to yourself. I'm sure it's pretty similar then for current high school athletes, college athletes, those that are in sports right now, playing, active members, of course. but what are some of the values that you think that they can learn from being a part of teams, from playing on a daily basis, that they can take with them when they eventually, try their trade at working off the court or off the field?
And I think the thing is, you have to understand that, first of all, you're in a situation where it's a diverse group of people coming together for one goal. That's typically how a workplace is too, and a family, right? So embrace that and be a part of something special with that. I think that's something that's really cool about sports. I would say humility too. Never think you're too good to talk to anybody or to do anything. Like, we all started from the bottom at some point. Like, don't think you're gonna, when you do finish high school or college, don't think you're immediately gonna get a job that's gonna make $100,000 a year. You're gonna have to work your way up. So just embrace the grind and know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel if you have the hard work and the work ethic to do so. And then, at the end of the day, it's all about being a good person and having values. And I think you also just got to figure out what that value is, what those values are, and then stick to them. And if people that come along don't align with that, or if a job doesn't align with that, don't do it. That's why I love working for the Mavs, because it aligns right with who I am. So it makes it very easy to work for them. And then last but not least, don't think that because you're not a professional athlete that you can't work with pros or you can't be a pro at something else. I always told myself I was going to play in the NBA, and then once I realized that wasn't a thing, my other goal was to work in the NBA, and sure enough, I was able to do so. So I'm not an NBA player, but I get to work with them, so it's pretty cool. Second choice, to say the least. It's quite a pay cut, but besides that, I don't really complain too bad.
I think one of the things you said there that stands out, you might not be a pro athlete, but you'll be a pro at something. And I guess at that point, it's really about being the best pro in whatever that venture is.
Yes, and you should treat it like you should treat your job, like whether it's sportscasting or it's being an agent or it's being a high school coach. You should treat that craft like you are training to be a professional athlete. To me, I literally want to be the best player relations manager I can possibly be. And there's certain things you have to do so. So like, I think that it's the same approach. It's just now I'm just not hooping. You know what I mean? So I agree. It's the same thing,
So to our all-star player relations manager, Brandon Barkley, thanks so much. Appreciate you taking the time, being so candid, giving us a little bit of the game behind the game in Dallas with everything that you're doing. Appreciate the time. Continued success. I didn't bring it up again because it hurt too much last night watching my Nets lose their fourth straight in Dallas. I know you guys had some celebs in the building, and it was an exciting time at the game last night. But wishing you and your org the best rest of the way, and we'll watch out for all the great things that you personally will continue to do in the future.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's fun talking, and people just keep working, and you'll achieve what you want to achieve. Just keep working.
A good note to end on. Thanks so much, Brandon. Appreciate it.
Thank you.